Thank you. So our next speaker is Ricardo Martinez, who is the co-founder and co-director of Padres y Jóvenes Unidos in Colorado. So Padres, and you've heard references to Colorado, I think, during the day and to this organization, they successfully led a campaign to change the discipline code in Denver in 2008. And then 4 years later, to help to pass the smart discipline law in Colorado, which was one of the first states in the country to really examine rolling back zero tolerance policies. Ricardo is now advising community organizing groups around the country that are working on school discipline reform, and also was a core member of the School Discipline Consensus Project by the Council of State Governments that developed the recommendations around what we can do, what multiple agencies can do to support school discipline policy and practice reform that I think is in your binders. So Ricardo, what I'm wondering is if you could tell us the story, because I think people have heard references to it, they may not know much about what has happened in Colorado. Tell us the story of the reform progress in Colorado, and then I think secondly, if you could talk to us about how as a group that is led by parents and young people, you established the kind of working relationship that you did with the school district, with law enforcement, and with legislators that allowed for those reforms to happen and for the work that you are now doing in implementation. In 7 minutes.
7 minutes, yeah. 7 minutes. All right.
And you can continue it over drinks.
Yes. That's the plan. That's the plan. And just for folks I know, and some folks don't know, like I said, we helped rewrite the policies and procedures for DPS, their discipline code, and it was a 3-year effort. It was started by parents and students, and in pushing for that, and then the state law. And then in 2013, we helped rewrite the agreement between the police department and the public schools as to the roles and responsibilities of law enforcement in the schools, making sure that we're just there to keep the school safe, not to enforce discipline policies. And so those are the 3 main things that we worked on with in DPS in Colorado. And at this point, really, it's a lot just the enforcement. How do we implement those policies to the true intent? And we built those intentionally into all those 3 policies to keep a check as students and parents and community at large, to make sure that once it's passing the policy, the second and most important part is how do we make sure that those policies are implemented as they were designed and meet the needs of the community. And also in there, I just want to like someone said, want to speak boldly. Those documents aren't really to regulate the behavior of the students. They're really here to put in check the behavior of the adults at all levels, from the teacher to the principal, the deans, and also the police. And I'm saying that because that's at the heart of when we work partnerships, that as we identify root causes and how those are manifested, a lot of it, and it was spoken here too, some folks saw it through one mirror, we saw it through a different lens, that most of the comments really are about policies and practices, biases that come from the adults. Even as to how we look at students. And I heard many at risk. And honestly, if you're not white, I'm at higher risk going to public schools than if I stay at home. And so, personal story. I was born in the U.S., raised in Mexico, went to school in Mexico. And in Mexico, I was it. I was the Mexican in the sea of Mexicans. Didn't do well in school. They sent a whole bunch of us to whether here would be like the National Guard, it'd be the Army over there, because we were not, we were rowdy, but kids are rowdy. So we were sent to the Armory, and that's why I got all my education with excellent teaching. But I was it over there. And the expectation I was going to learn math. When I came out of primary grade, I already knew algebra and science and all that stuff. Then, down the line, I moved to the U.S., and that was no longer it. Same human being, same intelligence, same knowledge of math, science, world history, but I was a Mexican in a sea of white. And the dominant culture said, you only speak Spanish, you have to be dumb. You have to go to special needs, which is fascinating how we break out the panels here. So we put, if you're queer, you're in the special section. If you're an English language learner, you're in the special section. The dynamics, I'm seeing it here play out. What we see played out in the world out there. And I say this also speaking boldly because we have to address how we look at ourselves and our work. So when someone says we look in the mirror, we really have to take a good look in the mirror, as my wife says, with the really bright lights, to see ourselves truly. Because the policies that we passed were to control the behavior of the institutions that have been, in our eyes, been running amok with our students. Public schools, like someone said, they're not an island. They really are the bedrock of the community and society. But conversely, what plays out in the general real world plays out immensely intensified in the classrooms and in the schools. And the racism that's alive and kicking out there in the real world is alive and kicking in our schools. So as we push forth to implement those things, we really have to work. Well, we are a community organization, by the way, and we organize to move organized power to change our society. But we know we can't do it alone. It has to be all of us working together. And we have to go from the spirit that we are working together as a society, that we all have a vested interest, and we are working for the best of intentions. I was saying before, having biased practices in the schools, the disparity in the not only the quality of education, but the disparity in the treatment of the students has a legacy. It always comes from a legacy. It's not an accident, but doesn't mean that somebody is a racist or a bigot. It just means that we live and we are conditioned and we have been brought up and raised in certain social conditions. So like in Mexico, I was a Mexican. No problem. I come over here, I'm the other. I was treated differently by a set of educators. And the difference in the treatment is what gets us in a bind, especially when we don't admit to them. And we'll find different scientific and educational needs to explain our ability and disabilities in the classrooms. But for us, we all live together. We really believe the schools are the bedrock of a democracy. Having people get involved in public education is one of the most, and when I say people, I mean everybody, is one of the most important tasks of schools, because discipline doesn't equate to punishment and consequences. Discipline was learning. It's the philosophy is a discipline. Fine arts is a discipline. Math is all those learning life skills and teaching life skills is a discipline. And we corrupted the word to mean punishment. Schools are the places where we should be educating all of us and really pushing forth that what comes in early childhood, when they get to 12th grade, they really are citizens of the society that are going to implement really true democracy. when we keep people outside that conversation, we weaken our democracy. The best way that we can have our young people, who, by the way, led this struggle in Colorado and DPS, is to give them full reign and use their expertise and desire to do right by the people that they live with. And most of our practices keeps them out.
So Ricardo, tell us how you then came to common ground with the district, right?
Yes.
To be able to move these reforms forward.
The one thing that really moved efforts is that we dealt with the systems. It was not individuals, it was systems, and we offer solutions because we all need to have a place at the table, and we said we need to work together and set aside all our misconceptions. And so even and have open, when that came up, have an open conversation. They're difficult conversations, but at the end, we really were much stronger together. When Denver Public Schools, when we first started working with them, we were at odds. And it was a process of conversation, some people said, and dialogue, and just learning from each other and working from the concept of respect and cooperation. And it's not easy. It's easy to say it, but it's not easy to practice. But just keeping that in check and really practicing in real life, restorative justice, restorative practice as we solve the problem of the disparity around discipline. Yeah.
So we will have time for questions, and then we can get Ricardo to talk a little bit more about what they did in Colorado, which I think is really